Welcome, I'm your host Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision studios in the UK, you're watching the Talking Tech Show on the BVTV network. Now, I personally dislike dealing with many big companies because to them, I'm simply a number. I'd hate to do that to my customers. Customers to me mean I get to live and I get to feed my family. So why are big companies so happy to hide behind walls of technology, to upset the customer experience and live with a churn of dissatisfied customers? I suggest to you that it's in this altered pandemic business world that it better change, or that churn will become a landslide away from them. It's something I wanted to discuss with someone who himself has a customer first, technology second mindset. From Netcall, let's meet Richard Farrell. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Malcolm. Great to be here.
And lovely to talk to you on this sunny Friday day. Richard, I was entranced with your website and I spent much longer doing my pre-interview research than usual. So tell us about Netcall, what you do and who you do it for.
Okay. So we help organizations transform faster and more efficiently. That empowers them to create a leaner and more customer-centric organization. So if we break that up into a few bits, to transform their business faster and more efficiently, for most circumstances, that means digitization of process and interfaces. Not exclusively, because we do work with customers who are still doing face-to-face activity as well. Leaner means cost optimization, and that's a real challenge for all organizations these days. So we can do more with the same, or the same with less. And then customer-centric is where we think the focus always should be. And customers are both the external customers, but also internal customers as well. And so we think that, and the research shows that to deliver really great customer experience, you also need to deliver great employee experience as well. So you need to give people the tools. We've been operating in the UK for more than 20 years. And we have a platform that addresses the key elements of many customer journeys. So there's the engagement part, which is getting connected across all the channels and sharing information from the interactions. And when necessary, enabling complex and emotional and high value communications to be with real people. And then as well as the engagement part of the equation, we also provide the tools to deliver the processes, the activities and the tasks that are required to execute an organization's proposition. So it's really two halves to the equation as we see it. There's the engagement, which is about getting connected and so on. And then there's the activities, which will include the tasks and the processes. And we pull those together. We've got more than 600 customers across all sectors. And they're roughly split half and half public sector and private sector. In the public sector, we work with many healthcare delivery organisations, NHS trusts, and also many local government organisations. In the private sector, it's mainly, the majority is in the financial services sector, but we do have customers across all sectors, typically where customer experience is a differentiator, and also where they tend to be complex or regulated. So there's a compliance part to this as well. So as well as doing a good job, you have to show you're doing a good job and have all the data and the records and so on.
Yeah. Compliance is so important these days, isn't it? But Richard, now I have to ask you a layman's question, and I put my apologies for being so ignorant as to have to ask that. What is low code and a low code platform?
Okay. So it's you're not alone. It's a relatively recent term. Forrester Research coined it about 5 years ago, but the concept is actually quite mature. So it's an application development platform that uses graphical user interfaces with drag and drop elements to create applications and automate processes. So it's for application development. This means that business users and they're called citizen developers can build applications as well as traditional IT. So it democratizes IT. More people can build applications. What was new about low code compared to older technologies? Couple of things really. One is the availability to deploy in cloud infrastructure as a service, and that confers many benefits. Time, so you can roll things out really quickly, but also the cost model. Rather than having a massive operational a rather capital expense right at the start of a project. Because it's cloud-based, you can actually pay as the value increases. So that means you can start small and grow. So the infrastructure as a service, the cloud lets us do that compared to the traditional models. And the other thing that's really helped is web browser technology. So you can do an awful lot more within a native web browser now compared to 5-10 years ago. So we've got the cloud infrastructure, we've got a web browser, which gives us the tools to do the job. What you can also do then is when you democratize the development process, you can get more people involved. So what we tend to find is rather than the process being business helping write a specification and chucking that over the fence for IT to go away and deliver and develop, it's more of a collaborative approach. So we have business users and IT users. Typically they're in joint teams, and it's a new way of working. The business is driving the applications that are delivered rather than IT.
Yeah, I like that, because I think that's probably more of the moment, isn't it? And well, we had this new normal, as they keep calling it, but it must be a lot easier to work like that, is it?
Yeah, for sure. So the pandemic has proven, without doubt, many of the claims that were made about low code beforehand. So we have customers, brand new customers that went live with fully fledged applications in a matter of days. So we had one hospital that went live with a solution for results in 9 working days.
Wow.
We have a fantastic story from Croydon Council where they delivered a business rates application. So the business rates grant that was eligible for leisure and hospitality businesses. They built that from start to finish with user interfaces, employee interfaces, reporting, integration, payment, single sign-on, 120 hours.
Never. Incredible, that, isn't it?
Yeah, and the guys are really keen to share that as well. We have a community with more than 1,000 users on there, and local government and hospitals are sharing their applications amongst each other as well. They have common challenges. PPE delivery, for example, it's common for lots of organizations. So rather than them all having to reinvent the wheel, they've been able to use our app share, which is sort of 80 or 90% of the application already built, and then they can do their last bit of customization.
I'm just point out on the screen behind me again your URL, because as I said, I went on there and I was fascinated with what you're offering and how you're going about it. Absolutely brilliant. Now, I like your customer first, technology second thinking, but surely that is only sensible thinking, isn't it? Why doesn't it happen to everywhere?
It should be sensible thinking. It's obvious, isn't it? And we're all customers, so we know how it should be.
Yeah.
To be fair, it can be hard for organizations to adopt this outside-in approach. And I know, we're in a tech company, so we would all love to spend hours telling you about our latest and greatest widgets and technologies and platforms and application programming interfaces. And I've got acronyms coming out of my ears. So we want to tell you about that because that's our stuff. Of course, it's the wrong way around. And what we've seen, I think, over the years is that, for example, omni-channel, that's a term that's been around for a long time, but most organizations haven't delivered on a unified customer experience. And part of that is because channel thinking is inherently an inside-out mentality. So that's demonstrated by a company enforcing its process on the customer and dictating when and how they engage. So if you want to deal with me, you have to call my contact center, and you have to call between these hours, which is, of course, it's an inside-out mentality before you even start.
Yeah.
What we see is that customers are, of course, they're not thinking about channels. They don't care about that. They don't care about your silos internally. They just want a great experience to get things done on whatever touch point is most convenient, and whichever modality is most effortless. So there is a conflict. I understand it's hard. But when you can start from, and when we always say, start from customer journeys, what does the customer want to achieve? What's the outcome? Okay, and then what's the best way to achieve that? Now, as you're doing that process discovery, of course, you may find that there may be parts of legacy technologies or processes, ways of working that you have to keep but you can still work around and deliver an effortless journey around that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's surely it's a question of attitude, isn't it? And attitude starts at the top in a business. You know, if you're going to say, I was in Colorado yesterday with the CEO of a CRM system called Sugar CRM, and he says, you know, we've got 5 million customers, but we care for them, and that's what we want as our purpose, our discipline, our ethos. You know, so surely it must start at the top, like it's starting with you.
I think that's true. And I think if we consider organizations that deliver exceptional customer experience, you know who the boss is. So if I think Apple, I know it's Tim Cook. If I think Amazon, I know it's Jeff Bezos. If I think of the Virgin brands, it's Branson. It definitely does come from the top. And Sugar CRM is an excellent example. We've used Sugar CRM, and it's a fantastic solution. And you can see that it is the way that it's customizable, and it's easy for the end user. You can see that ethos has come right the way through product development. Ease of use is, I think, one of the manifestations of whether you're getting it right. So as part of the journey, of course, we're getting feedback. We want information from customers. So not a whole load of net promoter score questions and, you know, death by survey, but questions about effort and how easy was this to use. Also get your objective empirical evidence as well. You can start to measure these things in journeys. So yeah, for sure, it starts at the top. You need to have that right throughout the organization. And, you know, there's in terms of technology, there's no differentiation. You know, it's ones and zeros, basically. Anyone can do it. It's about how you do it. And if you can get the customer first, then that's great for a long-term organization.
Yeah, excellent. Now, stories abound of IT adoption failure, with costs from billions downwards from government to small businesses. What do you think are the 3 or 4 top common denominators for such failures?
Okay. So there's a massive choice of failures to look at. And I think we come into 2 areas for failures. We come into planning and we come into implementation. For planning, I think consistently for failures, there is poor selection. And part of that poor selection comes from no end user involvement.
Yeah.
Okay, so you need end user involvement to select better in planning.
Yep.
And then in terms of implementation, a key challenge is not restructuring the business process. So just trying to deliver IT on top of what you're already doing. A project is an opportunity to look at the process and to improve it, and to look at where the weight states are and the failures and the friction. So restructure of the business process as part of the implementation is key. Those parts, the poor selection, no end user involvement, that also leads to, I think, the final point, which is if you get those first parts wrong, you also lack end user cooperation. So the end users then are fighting against you rather than on your side. You've done this to me. So we see, you know, fantastic projects where the planning involves loads of people throughout the business, often driven by the business because it's a business need, it's not an IT requirement. And then in terms of implementation of actual projects and processes and applications, it's a blank canvas. Think about how you should do it. And then we see some really fantastic examples where all stakeholders are involved as well. And this means customers, get them involved in planning the process and the journeys that they travel on.
Yeah, I think there's a very salutary message you're sending there to my CEO and MD viewers, and the CEO should be asking the question, you know, what do our end users think? Yeah. Simple.
A lot of the measurement hides a multitude of sins, and there's some really good evidence. I mentioned Net Promoter Score earlier, and it's a good measure comparatively, but we can point to many business failures where the Net Promoter Score was high. So what's going wrong? Where's the disconnect? And a lot of the evidence seems to see that friction and effort is what really affects the customer. And it's also about peak experiences as well. It's not just the business as usual 8 out of 10, everybody's happy. So when something goes wrong, when there's a billing problem, when there's a broadband failure, what's the experience like then?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Now, customers are changing, whether B2C or B2B. Let's use Richard's crystal ball and ask where you see customer behavior in the next 5 or 10, maximum 10 years.
Okay. So I think we've had an acceleration in the last 8 to 10 months. I think customers already, there's more evidence that they are going to be more values based. So it's not just about the cheapest supplier over time. It's about your environmental credibility, your sustainability. It's about values of the organization. I think we're already post-channel. And so if I think about my interactions on a smartphone, is it text channel? Is it a web channel? Is it a phone channel? Is it email? It's all of those. It's post-channel. So customers have already, they're not thinking in the traditional ways and those traditional channels anymore. So we've got to keep up with them. Mobile first is obviously the way to go. We recently, because this is such an interesting area, we recently commissioned some research, and it was just published this week. A good representative sample, 2,000 consumers, and we've got it all stratified by age and so on. And the research was looking at preferences for communications. And we found, or the research found, that the demand for telephone channel is still going to be high when it's for complex and emotional things where you need to talk to somebody. However, the evidence also showed a clear preference for self-service and automation, a preference to use those first, and that does correlate with age as well. So in 5 to 10 years, we're going to have consumers that are mobile first, that are going to choose their channel at their time of their choosing. We also got evidence that in the survey that people wanted 24/7 more as well. So it's a time of their choosing. So more flexibility, more values. We just have to be more responsive to this as customers. I think the other thing that we will see is more democratization of development as well. So even customers, as we see with some platforms, customers are actually developing their own user interfaces and experiences as well. So we can't think any longer that it's the business that delivers the interface. We will see customers are delivering things in their own way, consuming the content in the way they want to. So that will be a change as well. Lots of really interesting things going on. Clear that the customer needs to be right at the center of any organization's thinking.
Yeah, spot on. And I take very much what you were saying about the values. We have the Conscious Business channel, and that's one of our fastest growing channels where business is saying, how can we be a conscious business? So you were spot on there. Now, CX, or customer experience, is vital, but I'm not sure businesses are going about it in the right way, especially in this altered world. Yeah. For example, chatbots seem an ideal way to deliver nothing under the pretense of customer service. Or am I wrong there? What do you think are the hallmarks of an exemplar in good customer service today?
Okay, so the hallmarks are, I think, choice. So right. Whilst and the survey that we just did is exactly to your point, that if you're not doing it properly, then a chatbot is a bad customer experience. It's you're deflecting from what people want to do and how they want to get their problem resolved or their issue dealt with. So a chatbot for the wrong reason is a bad idea. A chatbot to reduce cost for the organization is going to lead to dissatisfaction with customers. A chatbot to increase choice and extend availability and let people self-serve when they want will improve customer experience. So it's about it's your mindset going into it. If you start with CX first, you'll get good results and you'll provide people with a way to escalate to live humans when necessary. If you're coming in from I need to just cut costs, then you're going to get some dissonance from customers because they see through it. I mean, we've seen this over years, IVRs in contact centers. These were the chatbots of 10, 15 years ago. Your call is important to us. Well, You know, we know what's going on behind the scenes here. If you use technology just to try and deflect cost without starting from the customer perspective, you're going to have problems. It's going to go wrong, and you're quite right. It's a way of avoiding service.
Yeah, I like that. Your call is important to us. Well, answer the blooming thing then.
Yeah.
You know, how far can automation in CX, the customer experience, go in the immediate future? I see a possible conflict between what I call authentic CX and lip service CX, evolving even further than now. Is this the opportunity for the agile and adaptive business?
Yeah, absolutely. The CX lip service is it's a nice form on a website that then gets printed out and stuck in a pile of paper or sent as an email in the back office. So CX, we know that CX doesn't start or stop at the contact center. CX is delivered as a sum of all of these interactions throughout all the different journeys in a life cycle. CX needs to be at the heart of that. You don't add CX to the contact center. You don't add CX to your website. Customer experience is what should be driving the development of those. And you know, how do we do it better? How does the agile and adaptive business do it better? I think we learn from the failures of the past. So if we have failures because of not understanding the scope, not involving the customers, get them involved in the planning. This is it has to be customer centric, or you'll end up, your customers will see through it. They'll know. They'll fill in the web form. And then when you haven't processed it for 2 days, they'll ring you up and say, what's happening with it? You need to automate that process. You need to proactively alert them with what's going on. You know, you get the SMS or the email, we've received your communication, we're dealing with it. You know, we mentioned Amazon earlier on. What do Amazon do? You know, I know when my delivery is 8 stops away, and they're doing that proactively, using the data and then driving the communication. So it's right back to the start in terms of our proposition. It's the processes and the activities that are doing things with the engagement and the communication to tell people about it.
Yeah, I've got to tell you, Richard, I'm one of those silly people who loves those type of messages. And I'm always on, oh, it's only got four more steps. And I'm saying to my wife, oh, it's only got 3 more stops. And yeah, you get you involved, doesn't it?
It does. And of course, you know, what does that stop? It stops failure demand. It stops them getting inbound, where's my parcel?
Yeah.
So if you think about your experience with lots of other deliveries, what you're doing, you don't know what's going on. So then you're getting on the website and you're trying to track the parcel and you're ringing people up. You don't need to do that. Do it the other way around. Think about what the customer would want. Well, the customer wants to be informed. If they're not interested, they'll just delete it. But, you know, it's using that data and then part of the process, communicate and engage.
And it takes you away from what I said in my opening piece about numbers. You know what I mean? I love going to a checkout in a supermarket and finding the name of the checkout person and saying, thank you, Muriel, or that. But then I can do the same when I get a delivery from the Amazon and say, thank you, Fred, whoever it may be. Brilliant. Yeah. Now, just before we go to the penultimate question, Richard, I just want to remind people again that your URL is behind me. And I wanted to also tell viewers, and I'll read it out, netcall.com for listeners, netcall.com. Don't go to the website as you would normally do to skim and then move on. Go to Netcall and take time, as I did, and you'll start to realize the whole new world that's around low code. Okay, Richard, as we all aim to trade increasingly global, especially UK companies post-Brexit, what CX challenges do you see for the business going global? For example, how to accommodate local cultures, language, etc. And how does Netcall help?
Okay. So, yeah, there are differences culturally. Language difficulties and so on are easier to deal with these days with technology. So it's very easy to translate and to provide things in the appropriate languages. So that's relatively easy to do. The cultural value and the values are different. What we found is that we can't impose our UK view on the world. That's not going to work. What we need to have are local specialists. And those specialists are not just specialists in the geography, they're also specialists within the sector as well, the vertical sector. So I mentioned we do a lot of work with local government. But we don't impose that model in the US, for example. It's set up differently. There's different ways of doing things. So we have partners in the US who know the different ways of working and those different values and so on. So really, that's the way that we see the world. Increasingly, we want to be global. We've recently made an acquisition of a company that's based in Belgium, and we have customers right throughout the world. But we are not going to try and impose our English way of doing things, our UK view on the world. We need to get involved with people who are locally and know the businesses as well, know the organisations.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, Richard, final question. I like to give all my guests 3 wishes. If I was to give you those 3 wishes for business leaders to adopt sincere or authentic CX, customer experience, into their business, what would those 3 wishes be?
Okay. I think the first 2 are quite easy. Listen to customers. So go and listen to customers. I still vividly remember, and this gives my age away for sure, Sir John Harvey Jones, when he used to do Banks.
Troubleshooter, was it?
Yeah. So everyone will have to look up on YouTube. We'll have to find some YouTube links for that. But it was back to the floor. It was literally go and listen to customers. So that's number 1, listen to customers. What also you need to do, so my second wish is listen to employees. They know where all the process failures are. They know everything that can be fixed in the organisation. You don't need an external consultant to tell you. Go and talk to somebody who's answering 50 calls a day in a contact centre, and they'll tell you where your problems are in the process. So customers and employees, listen to them is wish 1 and 2. And I think wish number 3 has to be that CX is understood at that senior management level, that the senior leaders understand that CX is not an add-on. It's not something that I need to add CX to my website. I need to add CX to my customer service. It's it's like our stick of rock with CX through the core of it. It needs to be part of the philosophy and the values of the organisation. So listen to customers, listen to employees, and when we do that, the senior management will understand that customer experience is not just an add-on. It's something that's core to the business.
Brilliant 3 answers there. Brilliant 3. Richard Farrell of Netcall, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you about putting customer first, technology second. Thank you for a brilliant interview.
Thanks very much, Malcolm. It's great questions, and it's great to think in these sort of terms.